Welcome back, scholars, to art class. And today we're going to learn a little bit about color. We're going to learn a little bit about the idea of plastic in art. And when we talk about plasticism in art, we're not talking about plastic like you think of when you think of Legos. We are talking about things that can be changed. We're going to talk about a new artist today and how that artist processed a lot of things that were going on in the culture and his life context at the time. And we're going to talk about where he lived, why, and how he changed according to what was going on around him. But at the beginning, I want you to do a little bit of thinking. I want you to think about what comes to mind when you think of certain colors. I'd like you to either write down in your creativity journal, your sketchbook, on a scratch piece of paper. For 15 seconds, just let your mind go and make a free association, meaning what comes to your mind when you think of a certain color. What smells, what emotions, what pictures, what memories. Pause this video, take 15 seconds right now, and write down everything you can think of when you think of yellow. Go. As you think of the color blue, what other things come to mind? In the same place, your creativity journal, your notes, your scratch paper, write down what comes to mind, any memories, feelings. What comes to mind when you think of blue? Pause the video and write that down for 15 seconds. When you think of red, what do you think of? For 15 seconds, write in your journal the emotions, the feelings, the senses that come to mind when you think of red. Now, what do you think of when you think of the primary colors put together? For 15 seconds, write down what comes to mind when you think of the primary colors together. Pause the video, write it down. When I think of these colors together, I think, of course, of the word primary. And when I think of primary, I think of primary school, elementary school, bright colors, toys for toddlers. And when I think of red, I think of fast food restaurants because fast food restaurants use red, and apparently it's supposed to help increase your appetite. When I think of blue, I think of the sky, and I think of freedom. And when I think of yellow, I think of the happy face, I think of bananas, I think of lemons, and I love lemonade. And when I think of yellow, I think of what I don't want to paint my kitchen because apparently yellow rooms, people tend to argue a little bit more. As a quick reminder, this term primary colors comes up, and you probably learned it in the past in art class. Primary colors, when you mix these in paint together in equal proportions, you will get black. Whenever you paint just two of them together, you will get a secondary color. When you paint a primary and a secondary together, you will get a tertiary color. So those words, tertiary, secondary, and primary, are words that you should already know and may come up in your writing. So when we talk about colors, we talk about hues. The hue is the color, and it's an intense color. When you add white to a color, it's called a tint. When you add gray to a color, it's a tone. And when you add black to a color, it's called a shade. And the gradient or the change from dark to light is called a value change. So this is a value change of, say, red here, or a value change of blue. So we're going to talk a little bit about values and color. Now, our artist for this time is Pierre Mondrian. Pierre Mondrian was born in the Netherlands in 1872. Now, there are some other artists that you might be aware of that were born in the Netherlands, but this is where the Netherlands is located. This is in the northern part above here, Europe, that you're used to seeing. We've got France and Spain and Italy. Right up here is Netherlands and the UK. So you can see there were some other famous artists that you may have heard of. Rembrandt was born in Netherlands. Vermeer was born there. And Van Gogh. Van Gogh was born down here. And we are talking about Mondrian today. And Amersfoort is where Mondrian was born. Well, at the time when Mondrian was born and was starting to study art, this is the kind of art that he would have experienced. This is what was popular at the time. There's a lot of natural painting, a lot of sense of light and color and what was going on in nature. And this is an example of an artwork that he did when he was younger, and it was a little different than what he was a part of. You can see he abstracted or altered what he saw into more basic elements. It's referencing, so abstract art references something that's really in nature, but it simplifies it. So abstract art is actually has something that it's representing, but it's simplified. So here's an abstraction of a tree. And he did this in the post-impressionist style, which is mostly started out in France. He moved from Netherlands to France, and he was inspired by Van Gogh and other artists. And he tried out different things, and you can kind of see how he changed as time went on. He tried out the style of Matisse, Henri Matisse, and this is the Fauvist style, where it's intense colors and really uh, active brush strokes. And he was inspired by Picasso. Picasso went from Spain to France for a while, and Jan Braque. And you can see here, this is one of Pierre Mondrian's artworks, and it is an abstraction of something real. It's based on something real. Here's a book. You can see a candlestick. It's a still life. And here's Georges Braque artwork of the same kind of abstraction. And so he was influenced by Braque. He was influenced by the Cubist period, and the Cubism period tried to represent things from different points of view at the same time. So you're looking at the front of the face at the same time as the side of a face. You're looking at the top of a guitar as well as the side of an arm at the same time. So you can see a simplification and an abstraction of the same thing. So these are all Pierre Mondrian's artworks, and they are all abstractions of a tree. Now, if he wasn't trying to kind of connect to an object, then that would be called non-representational. So this is an abstraction of a tree. Now, what was going on at that time? World War I had exploded, and he had to go back to the Netherlands from France, and he started everything because it was crazy. There was so much going on. He wanted to get back to simplicity and purity. There was so much evil, so much death, so much going on, sadness and economic destruction as well as physical destruction. He wanted to get back to the basics and the pure things. So you can see he and others at that time did a type of art that was really simplified. And you can see why. What are all the things going on in the background of all this? The end of colonialism, the rise of fascism and socialism, even technology. There was the Great Dust Bowl in the United States. There was the Great Potato Famine. There was all sorts of things going on where people didn't have enough to eat. There was economic strain. There was political strain. And everything was changing. So he started an art form that's called neoplasticism. And when we talk about neoplasticism, we're not talking about plastic. When we talk about plastic in art, we're not really talking about the plastic you think of like a plastic cup or a plastic Lego. We're talking about something that's able to be shaped or changed. And it was an idea that you should be able to shape and change ideas down into their most essential forms. And so he actually coined this art style, the phrase. He coined the phrase. He made it popular, and he expressed what his artwork was about, was down to the basic forms of value and color and what was most important. So with all of chaos going around him, he wanted to get down to essential values. And when we talk about values in art, we often talk about color values. But let's also think, what are your personal values? What do you use as your method of making decisions? What is most important to you? We're going to use your thoughts about what are your values that are the most essential in your life. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the discussion coming up after this lesson. But he wanted to distill his values of what was right and wrong and what was good in the world down into something very basic that anyone could connect with. And so he went down to the most basic colors and the most basic lines. And he went from this to this. And you can see how much he changed over the years. And his art has influenced art all around the world. At the very end, towards the end of his life, he lived in New York City. And he was influenced by the jazz and the music of the time there after the Harlem Renaissance. And he really loved jazz. And so here's some artwork that was inspired by his experiences in New York. And you can see it's a lot brighter, a lot lighter, and very different from what he was creating in the past. And it affected culture. I've seen makeup companies and other things that reference Mondrian's artwork. And you'll probably find some of it. And I wanted you to get an idea of what was behind some of his thinking in his beginning of the modernist movement and abstraction. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in the discussion, and you're going to be creating your own art as well. Thanks for listening.